All right. Good morning, everybody. Good to see you. I feel like there was family pictures today, and Tim, the drummer, and I are in a different family. Like that's kind of, I don't know if you noticed, man, that was not planned. It was just a good weekend for a black t-shirt. Speaking of shirts, this is really important. I want you to know next weekend is Hawaiian shirt weekend. Now, some of you are confident enough you're wearing them today, right? And which is cool. But others of us, we like to get a group of people together. And so if that sounds like fun, wear a Hawaiian shirt next weekend. And if it doesn't sound like fun, come and laugh at those of us wearing Hawaiian shirts next weekend. You'll be welcome either way, but I just want to put that out there. Really good to see you all here. I wrote this in the weekend snapshot, but it's been great to see us not take the summer off from worship. And I know people are traveling. I was traveling last weekend, but it's been really cool to see just not come in and feel like, all right, it's the summer. That's why nobody's here. So I'm glad you're here. If you're online, I'm glad you're online. I just got a message from my oldest daughter who's working as a camp counselor. It was a screenshot of the Northgate app. So I know she's online, which is cool. And so welcome, Grace. Good to have you there. And if you're not one of my couple favorite people in the world, I'm glad you're online as well. We're starting a new series. It's a short 3-week series before we get to fall kickoff called Agree to Disagree, because I don't know if you've noticed, but we live in a pretty polarized world. We live in an A or B world where people want you to pick, right? Coke or Pepsi. They do that where I'll order a diet. I mean, can I have a diet? Because I don't care if it's a Diet Coke or a Diet Pepsi. Just bring me the one without the calories. Some people have really strong feelings about ranch or blue cheese. Just had a friend last night tell me he's really disappointed in me that I don't like blue cheese. And I said, I don't want to dip any food in something that tastes like dirty socks smell. It's a policy I have. I love the Bills. I do love the Bills, but if that's required. Some people have really strong feelings on trucks, Chevy or Ford trucks. Man, I bought a Ford truck a while back, 2019, and just accidentally walked into the middle of this storm for people that really feel strongly about it. And I was like, I didn't know. No one told me. I just thought it'd be cool to have a truck. And then, of course, there's much more serious divisions as well. But the issue isn't that we don't agree on everything. The issues become that if we disagree, then I just get to kind of discard you. I get to disregard you because of who you voted for, or who you didn't vote for, or how you feel about an issue. And our culture and our society has in so many ways lost the ability to agree to disagree. Either see it my way or you can hit the highway, right? You're out of there. And that's not healthy. It's not a healthy way for anyone to live their life, but it's really not great for people who are trying to base their lives off the words and teachings of Jesus. That's not what we should be doing, to be sure. So we need to learn how to do this well. We need to learn how to agree to disagree well. And in order to do that, we're going to, number one, need to see the benefit of, and number two, learn how to be relationally generous. I'm going to talk about being relationally generous. Now, originally, when we laid out this series, the direction of this message was forgiveness. Because if we're going to agree to disagree well, we're going to have to be able to forgive. And I would say forgiveness is a topic I speak on multiple times a year, every year. And I've been doing that for 14 plus years here. But truthfully, I think it's pretty cut and dry in the life of Christ followers, right? It's a really easy case to make. And I didn't feel like making the same exact undefeated argument again this weekend. And maybe if you're wondering, like, how cut and dry is this? How clear is forgiveness in the life of a Christ follower? Well, Jesus said in Matthew 6:15, but if you do not forgive others their sins, your Father will not forgive your sins. I mean, I don't know how much more clear Jesus could have made it. Right? Forgiveness is not optional if you are a Christ follower. I know we want to talk about how legitimate the hurt was, or we want to talk about how much more right we were than the person who wronged us, right? Maybe we were 10% wrong and they were 90. We want to weigh that out. We want to put qualifiers on our own stories and on our own struggles, but Jesus didn't. He did not do that. He didn't give us any of those arguments as a way out of what this verse said. He said, if you don't forgive people their sins, then your Father will not forgive your sins. I mean, game, set, and match, right? It's over. I need that forgiveness. I'm relying on that forgiveness. I'm counting on that grace from my Father. And so what Jesus makes crystal clear is that if I want that, I also need to forgive others. I don't get to sit there with my arms folded, being a stubborn jerk to everyone else, not forgiving them while simultaneously saying, oh, thank you so much, God, for the gift of this undeserved grace you bestowed on me. So that's the biblical case for forgiveness in just a couple of minutes. And if I didn't have other things to say, we could just go, right? We could go on that. If you want to be a Christ follower, you have to forgive people. It's clear. I'd say it's simple to understand, but it's not simple to live out. So what I want to do today is talk to you about forgiveness in the context of relational generosity, of being relationally generous. And I want to do that through the Old Testament story of Jacob and Esau. We're going to look at about a third of the book of Genesis, which if you're familiar with the Bible is a lot. And here's what we're going to see in their account, something we need to be able to live out if we're going to agree to disagree. Forgiveness doesn't require forgetting, but it does require releasing. Because people say forgive and forget, and I say good luck with that, right? Good luck. Let me know how that goes. We know that God can forgive in that way, and I think we know just as well that we really can, that we don't. When someone, they do or say something that's really hurtful to me, and then they ask for my forgiveness, I will forgive them, right? I'm not going to stay up at night and try to figure out how I can get them back. I will release them. I will release the offense. But it's not like you really forget it, right? I'm not going to be like, oh man, what was that really awful, hurtful thing you said to me? No, I remember word for word what you said. That's kind of how it works. So thankfully, forgiveness does not require us to forget. But what it does require of us is to release the person, to release the offense, to release that desire for revenge, release the desire to even the score. And we see that in the story of Jacob and Esau. Now, this is in the middle of Genesis, and I'm going to tell you the story. I'm going to weave in a couple of verses. You can read this, probably not right now. It's pretty long, but you can read this on your own. Let me know. I'm not making stuff up. I might try to make it a little more easy for us to understand, but I'll give you the full story of these two brothers. So it starts with Father Abraham, and he had many sons. And if you grew up in church, you know that was really important that you understood that. I'm not sure why we really had to drill that into the kids' heads as much as we did, but he had many sons. He had 8, which I would consider to be a lot of sons. And one of his sons, Isaac, marries a woman named Rebecca, and he prays for Rebecca, and the Lord answers his prayer, and she gets pregnant with twins. Now, immediately, these babies, they start to fight and jostle inside her, kind of setting the tone for their lives. And so they're twin boys. The first one that comes out, he's red, right? It says his whole body is like a hairy garment. He's like something you'd scrub a pan with. And so they look at him and they say, well, that's an Esau. Like he's an Esau. And I agree, that sounds like a good name. And then after Esau comes out, his brother comes out holding on to the heel of his older brother. And so they name him Jacob. In Hebrew, Jacob means deceiver or supplanter, which can be interpreted as someone who kind of takes advantage of things, someone who likes to circumvent the rules to get their way, which is kind of a tough thing to put on a kid, right? We just talked about the power of words. Now, a second English meaning of Jacob is may God protect. I just want you to know if your name is Jacob, that's what your parents meant. That's what they were intending for you. And so the boys grow up, and Esau, he becomes like a skillful hunter. You know, he's a country boy, and Jacob just kind of likes to stay at home with his mom. You know, Esau, he drove a Silverado or an F-150, if that's important to you. And Jacob drove a white sedan. And if you're offended by that, I drive a white sedan. So that's the joke. Don't be too offended on your own behalf. And so their father, Isaac, he's an outdoorsman himself. And so he really loves Esau, right? Esau's kind of his favorite son. Esau's just a good old boy, and he's never meaning no harm. But Rebecca, she loved Jacob, right? Jacob is the mama's boy. And so the boys grow up, and we see this one time in their story that Jacob, he's cooking some stew. He's in the kitchen making up some lunch, and Esau comes in, and he's famished, right? He's been working hard, and he's starving. And he says, let me get some of that stew. I'm starving. And Jacob said, hey, sure. I can get you some stew. Just sell me your birthright, which is really weird. Like if you came in and you're like, hey, can I get a slice of that pizza? And your brother's like, yeah, just sign these papers real quick and give me a part of your inheritance when mom and dad die. I've got a notary next door. It's no problem. We'll just bring the notary over. And Esau, it's a little dramatic. He's like, well, I'm about to die. I'm going to starve to death. So what good is my birthright? So sure. And so Jacob gives Esau some bread and stew. It says he ate it, drank it, got up and left. And then it says he despised his birthright. Well, we've all had food remorse, right? Esau has food remorse. You're driving around and you see a fast food place and you think, oh, I'll get that. It's quick and easy. And then you eat it and you immediately regret it, right? You're like, why did I do that? Well, that's what Esau has. He had the stew, cost him a lot. Now he's kind of regretting that choice. In Genesis chapter 27, we run into another pretty significant problem with the brothers. Their dad, Isaac, he's now pretty old. His eyesight's bad. And so he calls for Esau as the oldest son. And he said, I'm now an old man, Esau. He's saying that to Esau. And I could die at any time. So what I want you to do is head out in the woods like the manly man that you are. Kill something good. Cook it up right. Bring it in here for me. And I will eat it. And I'll give you my blessing before I die. But Rebekah, she hears this, she's listening in, and she hears him say this to Esau, and so she runs to tell her Jacob, listen, your dad just told Esau to go and kill some wild game and prepare it the way that he likes so he can give him the blessing. But listen, that's not what we're going to do. Here's the plan. You go out to the flock, bring in 2 goats. I know how your dad likes that meat. I will prepare it, make it tasty just the way that he likes it. You'll take it to your father to eat, and then he'll give you his blessing before he dies. And Jacob's like, Mom, that won't work. Esau is so hairy, and if he touches me, he'll know that I'm not Esau, right? Like, I just got a pedicure. It's not going to work. He's going to know I'm trying to deceive him, and then he'll be mad. And instead of blessing me, he will curse me. And Rebekah's like, do not worry about that, Jacob. You do what I said. I'll take care of the rest. And so he goes and gets the goats, and she prepares the food, and she gives Jacob some of Esau's clothing. Now, you have to understand laundry at the time, not quite what it is right now. Like after you wash Esau's shirts, it did not smell Downy Fresh. It smelled like Esau. And so he gets that on, and then they put some goat skins on his arm and on his neck. I mean, that's how hairy Esau was. They're like, get a goat. That will suffice. And so she hands Jacob the food, and here he goes into his dad's room. He's like, Dad, it's me, Esau. And Isaac's like, how'd you find that so quickly? Like, what a hunter. That's my boy. I raised you right. He says, come over here so I can touch you and make sure that you're Esau. And he touches him. He says, wow, you sound like Jacob, but these are definitely Esau's hands. You're definitely Esau, right? And Jacob says, yes, Father, I am. So let me get some of that food and I'll give you my blessing. And so he gives him some of the meat and he gives him some wine, and it's great. And he says, come here, my son, and give me a kiss. And when he does this, Isaac, he smells the stink of Esau's clothes, and he knows for sure that it's him. And he says, may nations serve you. May people bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers. May the sons of your mother bow down to you. May those who curse you be cursed. May those who bless you be blessed. And Jacob's got what he came for, so he immediately gets up now and he leaves. And you can picture this if it's a play, right? Because the bed's there in the middle and Jacob walks off on this side, and as soon as he walks out, Esau comes walking the other side, and he's like, Dad, I'm back. Sit up and have some of this and bless me. And Isaac's like, old eyes, who this, right? Who's this? Oh, is that, it's Esau? Wait, if you're Esau, who was the other guy that I just had in here? Because I gave him all the blessing. I blessed him like crazy. And Esau bursts out in anger and tears and says, bless me too, Dad. He says, I can't. Your brother deceived me. I've given him all the control. I've given him all the blessing. And Esau, there's nothing left for you. And Esau's fuming. He said, you really knew what you were doing when you named him Jacob. He's a deceiver. First, he takes my birthright. Now he takes my blessing. So that's it. There's nothing left. There's no blessing left. And he says, I made him Lord over you. I've made him all the relatives, his servants. I've sustained him with grain and new wine. What could I possibly give to you, my son? And Esau is livid, right? I mean, he is beyond angry. He said, Dad is going to die soon. And once he does, Jacob will die next. Mark my words. And so Rebecca, the meddling mom that has to be involved in everything, stirring up the drama, trying to keep it all going her way. She says, hey, Jacob, so it turns out your brother's pretty upset about this blessing thing. So here's what we need to do. Pack up your stuff. Go. You're going to stay with my brother. You remember your Uncle Laban, right? For a while. And just lay low until Esau gets over this. Once he's over, I'll send word that it's okay for you to come back. And then she goes to her husband, Isaac. She has to manipulate this side. She says, well, we live among the Hittite women. And if we don't do something, Jacob's going to marry one of them, just like Esau did. And if he does, if that happens, my life won't be worth living anymore. So let's send him away so he can marry somebody better. Just a little bit of emotional manipulation there. And so Jacob heads off. It's under the guise that he's going to find a wife, but truthfully, he's going so Esau does not kill him. And we just need to make a quick stop in the story to say this about those of us who are trying to live relationally generous lives. And it's that you don't have to fulfill the toxic script. Jacob and Esau, they inherited toxicity from their parents, right? Isaac and Rebecca were far from a united front. This is not a couple we look at in pre-marriage counseling and say, how do we do what Isaac and Rebecca have done, right? How do we play the kids off each other and try to manipulate one another and each pick our favorites and try to put them in the spot, right? This is a very unhealthy family. And Jacob, he fell right into that pattern. It's the name that he was given. It's the role that his mother helped him play, and it became who he was. But you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. Just as Jacob didn't have to live like this his whole life, as we're going to see. You don't have to become an alcoholic because it's who your parents were. You don't have to leave because all the men in your family have always left. You don't have to be emotionally closed off because you have parents that can't say, I love you. You don't have to get sucked into stupid drama because your family eats stupid drama for breakfast. You don't. You can back off of that and say, I'm not going to do that. You are always one generation away from taking that excuse away from your family. You're one generation away from your kids not getting to say, well, this is what my parents did. No, you can live healthy. You don't have to fulfill that toxic script. And I just want to say, for some people that are here today, that's it. You came just for that. That's what you needed. You needed that reminder. You needed that encouragement that you don't have to fulfill the toxic script. So Jacob heads out, right? He's got to run for his life. Eventually, he arrives in Laban's territory. And a month in, Laban says, hey, just because you're my nephew, it doesn't mean that you should work for free. So name your price. What do you want? And he says, he got this answer ready, your daughter Rachel in marriage. Now, we just need to take a quick detour because it's a pretty small pool of people at this point. So now if your uncle's like, what do you want? You wouldn't be like, your daughter in marriage, right? That's weird. Then it's a little more acceptable. And Genesis tells us about his daughter, Rachel. Genesis says that Rachel had a lovely figure and was beautiful. That's what Genesis says. Gen Z would say she was a snack with that face card. So if that lands more with you, right? And then he has an older daughter, Leah. And it just says for Leah, not so much, right? Not as much. She was not as beautiful as her sister. And so Jacob was in love with Rachel. And he said, I will work 7 years in return for your daughter, Rachel. And so Jacob served 7 years to get Rachel. This is in Genesis. It's a sweet verse, but they seemed only like a few days because of his love for her. Just so sweet, right? 7 years just flew by because that was how much he loved Rachel. Genesis 29:21, it's not as sweet. Jacob was ready to get married. And so Laban throws a party. There's a marriage. And when Jacob wakes up the next morning, the sun shines into the honeymoon tent and he looks over and surprise, it's Leah. And Jacob says to Laban, what is this that you have done to me? I served you for Rachel, didn't I? Why did you deceive me? Ironically, at this point in the story, the deceiver has now been deceived and he's not happy about it. And Laban's like, oh man, didn't I tell you that? Shoot, I could have swore that I mentioned that. The younger daughter can't get married until the older daughter is already married. Customs and such. So how about this? Spend the week with Leah, because it's kind of a big week for her. It's her wedding week, even though you didn't know you were marrying her. And then after that, you can marry Rachel. But I am going to need you to work for another 7 years because that is the going price for marrying one of my daughters. I mean, how toxic is this situation, right? We start with Isaac and Rebecca and their mess, and then we've got Jacob and Esau and their mess, and now we're throwing in this conflict with Laban, and we have Leah and Rachel. He's married to both Leah and Rachel, and at that time, the sign of God's blessing was pregnancy, right? That's what happens. And so Leah gets pregnant first, and Rachel doesn't, and so she gets jealous, and her answer to that is to give one of her servants to her husband so the servant can become pregnant, and that's kind of like her baby. But eventually, Leah stops having babies, so then she also gives her servant to Jacob. So now you've got Jacob, and you've got 4 different women, right? And they go back and forth before eventually Rachel finally has a son named Joseph. It's like this twisted arms race of babies, right? It's like a baby's arms race, and they're just like trying to have as many babies so they can be more in control. And after Joseph is born, they'd been there for a while, and Jacob goes and he asks Laban, hey, could me and my wives and the children, could we return back home? Enough time has passed where he has worked that extra 7 years for Rachel, and he's had 12 children over the course of that time. And Laban doesn't want him to go. He's like, please don't go. God has blessed me so much because I've been with you. So name your price. And Jacob's like, you know how hard I've worked for you. And you know that God has blessed you since I've been here. But when do I get to go out on my own? When do I get to build some wealth, build my own household? And Laban says, just name your price. What will it take to keep you? And Jacob comes up with a plan. He probably had a plan already from what we know about him. He said, how about this? I'll take all the dark colored lambs and every speckled and spotted goat. That's it. Those will be my wages. If you see me with a lamb or a goat without speckles or spots, we'll consider it stolen. And so they separate, but Jacob, he continues to take care of Laban's flocks as a part of the deal. And so Jacob, the deceiver, he begins to manipulate the flocks so that all the strong animals end up with speckles and spots and the weak animals, they don't. He stacks the deck, making sure that he will win. And Laban and his sons, they start to realize what's happening, and they're getting mad because he's siphoning off their wealth, right? He's stealing from their father and stealing from them, and the conflict starts to grow. And once again, Jacob flees, this time to return back home. But he doesn't get very far. Laban catches up with Jacob, and he tears into him. He's like, what have you done? You've deceived me, and you've carried off my daughters like they're captives in war. Why did you run off secretly and deceive me? Why didn't you tell me so I could give you a proper send-off with music and with joy and singing? I mean, you didn't even let me kiss my grandchildren. And that's truthfully the biggest issue here, right? That's really what he's upset about. If you're a grandparent, you know that. It's like, you didn't let me kiss my daughters goodbye. You have done a foolish thing. Finally, somebody catches up to Jacob, and they take him to task for the way that he does things. And our reminder here is that you have to deal with your own issues. Jacob had this lifelong pattern of deception, of deceiving people. And then once he did it and it became a mess, he ran away, right? Then he just ran off, and that was the thing. But here's the thing that we learn, and you might know this. If not, you will know this. You can't change other unhealthy people. You can only work on your own health. You can't do it. It's incredibly frustrating to try. You can work on your own mental, emotional, relational, physical, and spiritual health, but you can't change other unhealthy people. And so he has these parents, right? He has Isaac and Rebekah, and then he's got this mess with his uncle who lied to him and got him to marry the other sister. And then there's this whole thing with his 2 wives, Leah and Rachel. But ultimately what Jacob needed to do was deal with Jacob, to deal with that deception, to deal with the unhealth in his own life. Do you know what the common factor is in all of your unhealthy relationships? It's you. It's you. You are in 100% of your unhealthy relationships. And so we need to deal with ourselves. We need to deal with our own issues. We need to worry about our own health because we cannot change other unhealthy people. And so Jacob and Laban, after he kind of tears them apart, they take an oath together before God to not attack each other, just to move on and live at peace. And they agree that Jacob will treat Leah and Rachel well, that he won't take any other wives on, and that they will both move on separately in a healthier direction. And so now, Jacob has got to step towards that. He's got this relationship with Laban kind of squared away, and that's in a better place. And he's moving on towards an encounter with his long lost brother, Esau. Now, it's been a long time, right, since that happened. You remember Esau, his Harry Silverado or F-150 driving Esau. And he was pretty mad the last time we saw him. He was, I'm going to kill my brother, kind of mad. And so what Jacob does is he's trying to set things up. He's trying to make it go his way. So he has some messengers sent ahead to Esau, and they tell him, your servant Jacob says, I've been staying with Laban and I've remained there until now. I have cattle and donkeys, sheep and goats, male and female servants. Now I'm sending this message to you that I may find favor in your eyes. And the messengers go and they say, hey, we saw Esau. We gave him the message. He's coming to meet you, and he's bringing 400 men with him. And Jacob's like, oh man, this is it. Shoot. Okay, let's split up. That way he can only kill half of us at a time. And Jacob prays, right? He's kind of in a corner now. And so he goes and he says, God, you told me to come back here, and you promised me that I would prosper. I'm unworthy of all the kindness and all the faithfulness that you've shown to me. I only had my staff when I first crossed the river Jordan, but now I have 2 camps. So save me, I pray, for my brother Esau, because I'm pretty sure, God, that he's going to kill me. He's going to kill my wives and he's going to kill my children. But you said, I will make sure you prosper and will make your descendants like the sand of the sea. And so he continues to try and figure out, well, what can I do to make Esau like me? And so he basically rounds up the entire Genesee County Fair as a gift basket. That's his plan. He's got 200 female goats, 20 male goats, 200 ewes, 20 rams, 300 female camels and their young, 40 cows and 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys and 10 male donkeys. And he gets all that together and he says, go ahead of me. And when you run into Esau and he asks, who owns all these animals? You be like, surprise, they're yours. Please don't kill us. Right? That's the plan. And so that night, they're preparing to meet Esau, and Jacob's pretty worried about this, and he's left alone. And it's this really interesting section in Genesis where God comes in the form of a man, and they wrestle. He wrestled with Jacob all night long. And then in the morning, the man says, let me go because it's daybreak. It's the morning. I got to get out of here. And Jacob replied, I will not let you go unless you bless me. The man asked him, what's your name? And Jacob is what he answered. And we see in Genesis 32:28, Rick fell asleep because it was so long since we had to switch him. The man said, your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you've struggled with God and with humans and have overcome. So very interesting encounter, right? Where God temporarily comes to earth in the form of a man in the middle of this story. And apparently it's a man that's a wrestler, and a wrestler with some really great endurance. Like, could wrestle all night. But what really comes out of this interaction that we need to see for our purposes today is that God changes his name. And just like Jacob, I want to encourage you that you need to let God alone define your identity. Your identity is not defined by what your parents said about you. He was no longer deceiver. He was no longer supplanter. Your identity is not defined by what other people say about you. It is defined by what God says about you. Definitely do not let unhealthy people define your identity. Don't let people who want to make you the sum of your past mistakes define your identity. You are more than the worst things that people think about you and say about you and believe of you. Jacob, deceiver, supplanter, has now been changed to Israel because he had struggled with God and with humans and had overcome. So who were you? Who were you and who are you now? I have some names and I have some identities that are no longer who I am. They're no longer what I do. I'm no longer defined by them. And the same can be true for you when you let God alone define your identity. Now, interesting to note, this name change actually takes place twice in Genesis 32:28 and again in 35:10, because sometimes we forget who we are, right? Sometimes we can get pulled back into our own ways, and we need this reminder that it's God alone who defines our identity. So back to the story to wrap this up. Jacob sees Esau. He's off in the distance and he begins to scramble, right? He begins to do Jacob things. He begins to scheme and try to figure it out. And he approaches Esau and he bows down, and Esau runs up and he just embraces his brother and he kisses him and he holds on to him, and they both wept. And Esau asked him, like, who are all these people? Who are these women? Who are these children? And Jacob's like, God's blessed me so much since I've last seen you, Esau. This is Leah and her children. This is Rachel and her children. This is Joseph. He's my favorite. He's like, what's with all these animals? He's like, oh, those were gifts. He's like, I don't need them. He's like, no, please, I insist. And Jacob says, if I've found favor in your eyes, accept this gift from me. For to see your face is like to see the face of God, now that you have received me favorably. And Esau says, okay, if you insist. He's like, come on, let's go. And Jacob, he's like, well, the kids are pretty tired. We've been traveling. The animals need to be fed. Why don't you just go on without us? And he says like, okay, well, I'll leave some of my men with you. And Jacob's like, no, that's cool. You don't have to do all that. Really, I just wanted to find favor in your eyes. I just needed to repair and reopen the relationship, not to make things how they used to be. Maybe get to a point where we have enough relational health where I don't have to worry about you finding me in the desert and killing me. But now, we can just kind of go on. And we see later in the narrative at the end of chapter 35, Jacob and Esau, they both come together to bury Isaac, to bury their father. But here's what they had. Here's what Jacob is doing here. It's this reminder that you must have healthy boundaries. If you want to be relationally generous, healthy boundaries is a part of it. Because sometimes you need space, and it's okay. The number one book I recommend to people in counseling and in conversations is Boundaries by Henry Cloud, and sometimes Boundaries for Children. Jacob and Esau, they don't merge their camps, right? They're not like, okay, now it's you and me, we're back together, right? They don't become best buddies. Things aren't like they used to be because forgiveness and reconciliation does not always mean restoration. I hear that. Forgiveness and reconciliation does not always mean restoration. It doesn't always mean that it's going to look the way that it used to look. And sometimes, a lot of times, that's a wise and healthy choice. Set boundaries with people that are unhealthy for you, with people that are toxic in your life. That doesn't mean that you haven't forgiven them, but it also doesn't mean you have to put them back in the position to hurt you again. And hear me clearly on this. If you are being physically, mentally, or emotionally abused, those boundaries should include separate living arrangements and restraining orders. And as your church, we would be happy to help you walk through that. Set physical, relational, mental, and emotional boundaries. Draw clear lines. Don't be a jerk. You don't have to be a jerk to be clear and to be firm. But don't let unhealthy people direct your life. Don't let unhealthy people live in your head. Be gracious, be forgiving, but take the space, take the time, make the healthy boundaries. It is the wise and healthy thing to do. Because most of all, what I want you to see in your own life, what we can see from the lives of Jacob and Esau is this crucial fact. You will be happiest when you are relationally generous. Have the courage to face the unhealthy situations in your life. Be generous with grace, with forgiveness, and with love. Do it because it's the right thing to do, especially if you're a Christ follower. Remember the beginning of this message. But also do it because it is when you will find the most health and the most happiness in your life. I mean, think about it. Who are the happiest people that you know? Is it the people that hold grudges? Is it the people that never offer grace and forgiveness? Is it the people that sit around and complain about slight after slight in their life, sometimes from years or decades ago? No, it's not. The happiest people that you know are the people who are relationally generous, the people who offer grace and forgiveness, the people who choose to love instead of to hate, the people who release the offense and release the offender. And do you think Jacob and Esau, were they happiest before or after this reunion encounter? And that's why the Apostle Paul, he gave the church in Rome this really important instruction in Romans 12:18, when he said, if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. That is a verse of relational generosity. As far as it depends on you, do what you can. Peace won't always be possible. But the reason should not be that you weren't willing to do everything that you can do, that you weren't willing to go as far as you could go, as far as it depends on you. Because there's some really good news in this story. Jacob, he starts out as an unhealthy person from a toxic family, but he overcomes that. And the good news is, if that sounds like your story, so can you. You can learn to do what it takes, as far as it depends on you, to live at peace with everyone. Let's pray. Father God, I pray that we would be relationally generous people. God, yes, because your word says it. God, Jesus tells us clearly, Lord, if we want you to forgive us, that we need to forgive others. But God, also, I know we will be healthier. We will be happier. We will be emotionally stronger, Lord, when we are living relationally generous lives. So God, I pray you would help us by the power of the Holy Spirit, by the power of your word, by the power of living lives that are surrendered to you to do that. God, help us to be people who are marked by grace and love and not grudges and anger. God, help us to be people that release the offense and the offender. And as far as it depends on us, people that live at peace with everyone. We pray this in Jesus' name.